It's great to be back, and since we are in spooky season, I wanted to put together a quick video review for a game I just discovered while streaming for Spooktober. Now this isn't a deep dive into the story, but I will be explaining the premise of the game based on the opening few minutes. This review will not contain any major spoilers, so you can choose to experience the game for yourself if you wish. Zero Protocol is a first-person sci-fi thriller where you play as Robert Brooks. No, not the Super Bowl winning wide receiver who played for the Green Bay Packers in the 90s, but as the new head of security that has been contracted to work at the International Antarctic Station, or the IAS. While waiting for further instruction from the receptionist, you end up passing out and eventually waking up in a medical bay. You quickly learn that Zero Protocol has been initiated and that everyone is to head to the residential level of the complex so that they may be evacuated within the next few hours. But they cannot take any wounded or unconscious individuals. Reading through the terminal further, you learn through a suspiciously glitched message that someone is trying to help you. When you are able to finally unlock the door to your room, suddenly the power goes out and you're left to explore the dark facility with no lights. You immediately learn that something terrible had happened as bodies lay bloodied and covered under white sheets in the hallways. From here, you start to make your way out of the facility. Zero Protocol was developed by a lone Russian developer named Robert Permalis of R Games. With a slew of smaller, simpler HTML games, he started to develop more intricate games more reminiscent of Super Nintendo and Genesis games, some twin-stick shooters, and finally, his first shot at a first-person shooter was Zero Protocol. Upon completing the game and seeing his name in the credits, along with some purchased assets, I was genuinely impressed with what he had done nearly by himself. This game clearly takes inspiration from games like the earlier Resident Evil games, System Shock, and even some Alien Isolation vibes. The atmosphere at times really made me feel like I was playing a first-person Signalis, which was another game that I reviewed last year. Zero Protocol goes for the PlayStation 1 era graphics, but modernized. The developer successfully does this, and it looks pretty great. The lighting effects pair nicely with the pixelated low-resolution graphics, which does well to help create a dark, bleak, yet visually acceptable experience. I was worried that the art style would ruin the horror experience for me, but it accomplishes what it needs to. The developer opted to use many pre-made assets for the enemies, which is understandable for a solo developer. That being said, the assets used fit in well. Where this game truly shines is with the audio design. Especially early on in the game, invested players will be pulled in and freak out over some of the ambient sounds this game shoots at you. What Zero Protocol does is place you into this world with very little ambient music and mostly just silence. The sound of your boots pattering against the metal floor, left to listen for the sounds of enemies, whispers, and more. When there is ambient music playing, it's low, mellow, and helps create a chilling atmosphere. There are very little actual voiced lines, but gun noises, enemy noises, and sound effects do more than enough to pull in the entire package. This is going to be the toughest part of this review. There are a lot of things that Zero Protocol does very well, but some things that it just doesn't. Early on in the game, the ambient sounds, flickering lights, pair really well together to help keep you on the edge of your seat, but in later chapters and levels, you just become used to the sounds that you're hearing, so a lot of the suspense just kind of disappears. The variety of enemies was also a little bit disappointing, but I won't go into much more detail so as not to spoil anything. But the majority of the enemies you face against are humanoids or spiders. Outside of that, there's not much more, and I wish there would have been a little bit more seasoning to keep my gaming taste buds popping. There are some really good mechanics in place, especially when it comes to the sanity mechanic that would allow you to hallucinate, which admittedly got me to shoot at a few things that weren't there. But as you progress through the game, you're able to find so many items that help combat that, it just really doesn't come into play nearly as much. If the developer was able to find a way to keep that fresh for the entirety of the game, it would have been fantastic. What's done really well is the variety and quality of the puzzles. Some are pretty basic, and some do a really good job of making you think. Nothing is inherently difficult, but I appreciated that I had to sit back and just think about some of them. That does lead me to my next negative point though. Between the combat and the puzzles, this game often feels like just go to point A to get the key that's going to get you to point B so that you can unlock the door at point C, just so you can open the locked door that's all the way back at point A. And this feeling never really went away throughout the entirety of my playthrough. Admittedly, the gunplay was really fun, and there were some tense moments, but again, many of them were very predictable and had the same gameplay loop. This is where I circle back to wishing there was a little bit more variety in the enemies. It could have been so much better. That's the whole tug of war that I have with this game. It does a bunch of things very well, but never enough to fully give you the experience that it could have. Great ideas executed very well, but just not enough flavor. Also, there's a few mechanics that are implemented later in the game that left me struggling because it's never really explained how to use certain items. It's never really a good thing to change things up on the player if you've already set them up with one set of mechanics for the entire rest of the game. One of my favorite features this game has, however, is the ability to take pictures of codes or other puzzle answers that can be quickly referenced when you open up door locks. It's such a nice quality of life feature that I wish more games used. I mean, I don't mind taking my own notes, and believe me, I took some notes of my own during my playthrough, but this was still a much welcome addition to the game. My final note is that you are pretty much just left to figure out a lot of things on your own. There is one enemy type that you may find incredibly annoying that are basically unavoidable, and they will kill you quickly and easily. This was one of the biggest complaints I had seen in Steam reviews. There are two ways to combat this enemy, but none of which are ever explained to you. Oh, by the way, you do have to open your inventory to switch your weapon rather than having a dedicated button for it or by scrolling your mouse wheel, and I was mildly perturbed by this, but I got over it. Oh yeah, did I mention that going into your inventory menu doesn't pause the game at all? Heed my warnings now. While the complete story can be completed in less than 3 hours, it was the story that kept me engaged enough to finish it in a single sitting. There is a ton of lore and hints sprinkled throughout the game that helped you to understand what was going on inside of this facility, also hinting at things to help you make decisions as well. If you took the time to read through them, it's not groundbreaking writing, but it is still a quality story. Now, while I've only completed the game once and I got what I would consider the quote-unquote good ending, this game does have multiple endings, up to 4, I do believe. Playing through the game, it appeared to me otherwise to be a very linear game, but I do plan to go back and see if I can get the other endings, of which I can think of 2, but I do want to find out what the other 2 might be. It's also worth noting that there are some secrets to find in each level depending on your sanity meter, or your own personal intellect, for that matter. Zero Protocol is definitely a labor of love from a single developer. There's a ton of great things here to keep people invested in the game and has some replayability. For $12, in my opinion, this game is definitely worth it, but I bought it on sale for $10. If I look at this game as an equal to every other game out there developed by a team of people, this one is definitely good. It stands on its own. But it's an impressive game for a one-man team. Regardless of how many people actually developed this game, it's a quality horror puzzler with some great action and stands well on its own. I do recommend this game at its current price point, which I find to be a rarity these days. It's definitely one of those perfect games to stream for a Spooktober stream game and get it completed, in a single stream. Now, if you like this video and like to see more, please make sure to interact by liking, commenting, and subscribing to the page. In addition to all these small videos, we also do a podcast that's available wherever you listen, as well as recorded live on Twitch. So make sure you check out our website at bucketbytes.gg for more information. And if you'd like to see a full story recap for this game, please let me know in the comments and I'll go ahead and put that video out for you as well. I appreciate you all watching. Have a great day. Goodbye.